put in?
Well, not 4 D-Star repeaters, but 4 functions, like if you want to store the unlink and the reflector command and that. You only have 4 choices. There's a block of 10 that I did.
So maybe it wasn't a good idea to buy that board for that radio.
Well,
it gets my feet wet, I guess.
It does. It does. Yeah. You're probably going to grow into one of those.
How is the audio quality on D-Star? How is the audio quality? Is it better than, or equivalent to like 2 meter FM or better?
Oh, better. You won't hear all the static.
Yeah.
You won't hear. You won't hear all the squeaks and squawks and boots and there's a single phase.
Right. And some repeaters, there's a muffled quality sometimes. Like the guy's got a sock in his mouth or something. Not all of them, but there's some repeaters like that.
You know about FM repeaters?
Yeah.
Well, you've got so much variation in audio quality between repeaters that some will sound clear, some will sound very different.
But with D-Star, we won't have it.
It's fairly consistent audio. Now, where you'll get a difference is somebody's running a DV dongle and they don't have a good headset that they're going to use with it. But the regular radios, they will be consistent. They'll be good. It will sound a little bit different because it's digitized, low bit rate audio. So your ear will train a little bit to it, but it's all very clear and very consistent. When you say digital, it's not like high definition audio or CD quality audio, but it's very consistently good audio.
Radio almost?
No, not really. The only difference is you're just not going to hear all the static. Now, when someone gets down and signal down kind of near where they're about to drop out, you will get what we call R2D2. It'll be kind of a little like that. And that means their signal, they're almost down in the muck.
Yeah.
But other than that, whether their signal's here or here, they're going to sound the same. It's when they get way down here that you start to either get a little bit of that no man's land with the R2D2, or
you get
the drop.
a bleepy like.
Yeah. But other than that, it's going to be very consistent. It's like on your landline telephone. It's kind of consistent audio there. It's not full audio frequencies, but it's a limited audio spectrum, but it's very understandable. I think in terms of with any impairment in the hearing,
it's going to be
D-Star
better.
would be easier to understand than FM.
I concur.
I think it would.
Can you Q&A session, just make sure to repeat the question, the web page.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, are we ready to get started? Is everyone back? Not yet, but if when I say to, if we can turn the lights on. All right, have any of you done much with the D-Star data? Have any of you used DRATs? Ooh, surprising number. For those of you who haven't, I want to introduce you to it, tell you a little bit about the data itself. Remember when we talked about this will help a little bit. Remember when we talked about what's in that 48 bits per second? There were 1,200 bits that were reserved for data. And remember, every D-Star radio has a serial port. So it's very easy to interface that either directly to an RS-232 or through a USB to serial, or if you have, for example, that RT Systems RTS-05 cable, it's straight to a USB port. One cable connects between your radio and your computer. And this will work simplex, it'll work through repeaters, and it'll work through reflectors. Now, if you are running data, you want to remember to disable the GPS functions in your radio because it's kind of an either-or situation. All right, low-speed data. Some people will say there's no error correction on the data, like the forward error correction on the voice. That is true. However, error correction is usually handled in some of the software applications like DRATs. And again, you can work without the internet. You can work simplex through local repeaters or linked. Or if you're just wanting to run the GPS position data, it can run simultaneously with the voice. Here's that easy connection. Don't need a TNC in the middle, don't need a signal link box, don't need a rig runner, not a rig runner, but what's the other one that they use for interfacing a sound card? Rig blaster. For D-Star only, this is it. Cable between a radio, whether it's a mobile or a handheld. All right, enter DRATs. There's a gentleman here named Dan Smith. You meet him over in the D-Star booth over in the main arena. KK7DS, I think he's here this year. He wrote a program. It's one that hams really like because it's free, number one. It's easy to use. It's really kind of an all-in-one program, and I really do like it because it'll provide all these functions: messaging, email, file transfer, mapping, and position reporting. And you can download it at www.d-rats.com. Where did rats come from? It's star spelled backwards. All right, a little bit of trivia. DRATs can be used for simple data communications between one or more stations. It's gaining a lot of popularity. I'm very active in Aries, and so we're getting some increased interest and usage in emergency communications. One of the very handy things that DRATs will allow you to do, when you transmit over the air, anytime you transmit a radio signal, your call sign is transmitted. Now, what if you want to use tactical calls, like for supporting a parade or emergency event or shelters or whatever you may be doing, public service? You can change the call sign which goes communicated between DRAT stations to a tactical call, like Shelter 1, EOC, Parade Lead, whatever you want to put there. Because you're still legally transmitting your FCC call sign every time your radio keys. DRATs will work on a variety of platforms: Windows, Mac OS, Linux, and you can take many interfaces to it, one directly to a D-Star radio. If you don't have a D-Star radio, you can do it through an internet connection, and that can be bridged through another little software piece that comes with it called a Ratflector or repeater proxy. It can also run in a very simple form with a KISS TNC on packet. And we're starting to see some things that can bridge the packet and D-Star data world, which will really be handy. Here are the major functions of DRATs, the messaging. You can do this by sending like a regular NTS radiogram. It can be in an email format. You can even send and receive WinLink 2000 messages through DRATs. The chat function is very handy in that it's like any kind of chat function. You can see who's out there. You can send a message and it gets retransmitted to everyone. So for just quick, short chat-like messaging, that's very handy. File transfer function is really neat. You don't have to have a person standing by and operating on both ends for this to work. And that hence the word unattended. When you configure DRATs, and we'll show you how to do that, you can configure or designate a folder on your computer that is your file transfer folder. And anything that is uploaded or downloaded goes into and out of that folder, not your whole PC, just that folder. You can also do forms, and several are predefined in there. For those of you doing emergency communications in Aries and races, you'll be familiar with the ICS 213 form, which a lot of our served agencies really want to see. That form is predefined in there, as well as the NTS radiogram and some others are available. What this does, you have the predefined form on each end. You fill in the form. You send it to another station. Just the raw data is sent over the air. It populates the form on the other end. You can print out that form, hand it to your served agency on the other end. It's in a format that they are used to seeing. And you can customize forms and define some new ones if you need to. The mapping and position reporting, maps can be downloaded within DRATs, and your GPS position, if you're squawking that information, will be reported on the map here, as well as, like we said earlier, it goes to the APRS network as well. You heard me mention the term Ratflector. There's another module that's included when you download the DRAT software called Repeater Proxy. It's a ratflector because it's a DRATS reflector. You can, I can start it up on my computer here with this screen, and I can define a port to connect to a radio. And what that will allow me to then do is to bridge users coming in via the internet to users coming in over a radio. So a ratflector is just like a reflector, but it can have several legs that you connect it. You could connect it to a packet TNC, a KISS TNC like a KPC3, and some of that functionality for AX25 is being built into that. So that bridges with a ratflector. I've got one set up at my house on my network that we use for our local Aries group and starting to use for more emergency communication support in Georgia. I'll show you, give you a quick demo of that. When you install DRATS, you download it, you start it up, and you're going to enter the preferences screen automatically for the first time. You'll see this information. For call sign, you'd normally put your call in there. If you're operating in a role where you want to put a tactical call sign like Shelter 1 or something, you could put that in there, and you can change that at any time. You really just need to put that and the name in this first screen under preferences. The next thing you will do is define the paths, and the only one that is really important to get you started is that file transfer path. You just designate some folder on your computer that you want to either have people pick up files on out of your computer or upload from another place to your computer. The next thing you want to do is define a radio if you are connected to it, or if you're connected to the internet. Now I have a bunch of things defined here, but I only want to check one at a time. The checkbox that is there is my ratflector at home. And so if I send a message to it, if anyone else is in there, that can help me bridge through there. So even from here in Dayton, Ohio, I can communicate with someone, either an internet user or a local radio user at home in my area through that ratflector. If I am going through the radio, I want to define it. It will be through a COM port. You can see some of them that are defined. For example, if I'm using my 2820, it's going to come up on COM3 or whatever port that I designate for it. There's different baud rates that are standard for each radio. You can change them, but the ones that are standard and on the DRATS documentation, there will be a list that'll tell you what the default baud rate is for those radios. So I can define any number of radios that I want, but I only want to check one at a time. All right, let me do a quick, just a quick demo with DRATS. See if I can do this without too much trouble. I'm going to bring up, I'm connected to the internet here, so I'm going to bring up DRATS. And at the lower left of my screen, you'll see that I am connected. What am I connected to? I define that in my preferences and the radio. And you'll see I am connected right now to, this is a public ratflector that is set up that anybody can connect to. I'm going to set up to my home ratflector in my area. Watch the lower screen. It is connecting, and then it connected. Now, I can send a message here. I can go to a chat screen. I'm going to right-click over here in the station list. I'm going to ping out there and see if there are any stations connected. Now, I should see one for sure come back to me if it is operating, and I don't, yeah, I did. This is another instance of DRATS running on another computer, and that is for Gwinnett Aries. Now, I can go out there. I'm using that as kind of a file server, so I can go out there and do that. There's another station. There's a good friend of mine, WW3A, happens to be on. I don't know whether he, well, it says he is unattended, so I probably can't talk to him right now in chat. But see, I got the message. Let me just go over to the file section, and I want to connect to Gwinnett Aries, and it's going to connect. And right now I'm just doing this over the internet, but also at home I'm going out on my local repeater, and that repeater is connected to reflector 30D, which some of the reflectors in the Delta module are being used for data only. Kind of encourage that as some place to do that. Now, what came up, this looks like an FTP screen. For those of you who are familiar with FTP programs, you have your local machine on the left, your remote machine on the right. It pulled down a file list of what's on that other machine. So if I want to download something, if there's anything on there that I don't already have, here's a test file. I'm going to download it. It's going to start downloading, and you'll see it come up on the other side. Now, one of these stations could be on the radio. They could be, another station be on the internet. See that file show up on the left side? So I can do it the other way. I could send that back over. I think I've got all the files in here almost duplicated on each side. But I can do file transfer with a single station. Now, our local group also uses FLDigi and WinLink and some other things. What I really like about DRATs is I can send a message. When I send a message on FLDigi, everybody hears it, everybody receives it. Now, it's addressed to a person, so I have to figure out whether that message was for me or not. Here, I can send a message directly. Now, here's KQ4KK. He's over in Aiken, South Carolina. I don't know whether he's coming in over radio or internet. It really doesn't matter. But if I want to send a message to him, just a regular email message, and I want to send it to get where I can see this. In fact, he's probably going to find me on here, and he's saying something. So test. And I'm going to send this. Now, first thing is DRATS is going to say, is this person on the, is he accessible right now? If he's accessible right now, it knows that he's out there. It'll send that message. If he's not, it will hold it until he comes back on, and then it will send it. Now, it was in my outbox. I had some other trash in there. So it's now sending that message. It went out, and he got it. Now, he's probably over on the chat screen. There's some folks there. Oh, look at what he said. He's watching us on the Icom site. Hi, Kent. So you can see this is actually working. So I just want to give you a quick demo of DRATS. It's something that can be done. This can be done on any radio. Yes, sir, in the back. You do turn GPS data off.
Right. And you also had up there, though, you can download maps and position reporting.
Yes, good question. Question was, I said turn GPS data off if you're using data. Then how do you get position data? Well, there's a couple of ways you can do it. If you're just sending GPS data and you're not using the other function of DRATS, you can still just use the GPS. But if I want to do both, I can hook the GPS in through my computer into DRATS, and then I can do both voice and data, GPS data and any other kind of data in DRATS. That answer your question? Right, and speed and get all that configured right. That can be challenging sometimes. The world of serial ports. Party tonight. Oh, this guy, he's a card. Love him to death. All right. Let me go back to that because I want to talk a little bit about high-speed data. When you're operating in the 1.2 band, you're operating from 1240 to 1300 megahertz. It's pretty high stuff, right? Well, along with that comes some additional attenuation, which you see at the bottom, comparing. This is just the free space loss comparison between the 2 meter band, the 440 band, and the 1.2 band. Basically, you're going to lose another 20 dB of signal between 2 meters and 1.2, which makes it a lot more line of sight. It's not perfectly line of sight, but it needs to be a little bit more, and your signal's not going to go as far unless you happen to be in the air. We've actually used our 1.2 data from an airplane and sending back aerial photos. And that because you are line of sight when you're up 1,000 feet to the repeater, and we've been 50 to 70 miles away and sending it over 1.2 from an airplane. That's pretty neat stuff. It also got us about $225,000 in funding in Georgia because Georgia Emergency Management liked that capability. All right. Get through some of this stuff. Okay, the 1.2 gig radio, the ID1, neat radio. It will operate FM voice or it will operate in D-Star mode. And you can do regular low-speed data just like we were doing. And you could link in through the voice module and do DRATs over it. But you can also use the 128 kilobit higher speed data. Because you're getting on up there in frequency, it doesn't put out as much power, it's only 10 watts, but that works pretty well around. Remember that this is operating in high-speed data mode as basically an Ethernet bridge, a bridge between 2 points, either your laptop and the repeater, which is connected to the internet, or between 2 radios. It can be either way. It can be used to create a wireless bridge. I think Donna and the group down in the Panhandle of Florida, down around Tallahassee, have actually used it to bridge kind of a last mile internet out to the last point where we have internet, and then let's go a little further on out. So you could use 2 radios for that. Now remember when we were going through the registration page, remember that 10.something IP address? Here's where it's important to know that address for you, because when you configure your laptop for that, you need to configure it for that static IP address. That's the hard way to do it. I'll show you an easier way in just a minute. You can use this for internet connectivity. These are some of the pictures we took, and let me share a quick story with you. We use this for our local simulated emergency test for our Aries group in Gwinnett County, Georgia. We were in the middle of the biggest drought in 100 years in the southeast. So what do? We do a test on flooding. Okay. The lakes came back that same spring, by the way, after that. We were tasked with going out and manually reading some stream gauges and inspecting dams in our area and reporting that back. And we did real good. We sent some photos back, and we got to the very last point, and the last point was to read this stream gauge on this bridge. There was a barricade across the road, as you see in that picture there. Our local EMA director said, "No, they're in the wrong place. Send me your GPS coordinates." Oops, you're in the right place. Now wait a minute, I get aerial photographs of the entire county updated every 6 months, and I'm looking at that and there's no barrier there. Guys, send me a photo from the field. There's that fence across. He kind of liked the idea that we had more updated information than he had. So that kind of secured our position, and he's now a big D-Star fan as well. A month later, I did a presentation to Georgia Emergency Management. They said the governor wants to be able to send photos from the air. Can you guys do that? I said, yes. What will it take to do that? I said dollars. A year later, we did get a grant for about $225,000 for putting up D-Star repeaters around the state. To configure an ID1 very quickly, in DD mode, digital data as opposed to DV mode, digital voice, you have an Ethernet connection between the radio to your PC. You either use or you must use that 10 address that you were assigned. You need to know the gateway is going to be 10.0.0.1. If you want to use some kind of a DNS address, I always use 8.8.8.8. That's the Google DNS. But there's an easier way to set all this up. First, you want to program the radio. And in this case, I put in the frequency, DD mode, RPS, which is the high-speed data. That's what I'm going to put in the UR and repeat 1 and repeat 2 to get into my local repeater A module. And then here's the setup that I use. I insert a little wireless router in between the PC and the ID1. Now, what does that accomplish for me? I either have to program, if I connect my PC directly to the radio, I have to program my Ethernet card with that 10-dot address instead of, normally my PC is set up for DHCP. Well, if I insert a little wireless router in place and program that 10 address on the WAN side of that router, then I just plug in my PC on the other end and let the router give me an IP address. So this is the configuration that I would use. And I have this, I thought I brought it downstairs this morning, but I didn't. I have an ID1 configured in a little Pelican case. It has a little 9 amp hour battery. It has also a 12 volt power supply that can either charge the battery or if I can run off of that. It has a little Linksys WRT54GL router, which is a sweet little Linksys router that isn't made anymore, but you can find them on eBay. And I changed the firmware in it from the Linksys firmware to DD-WRT, which gives me a lot more capability. So I can connect my PC wirelessly, Wi-Fi, to my ID1 through that router, or I can just plug in an Ethernet cable to it. And I don't have to change any configuration on my laptop. So this is a very easy way to implement that in kind of a little field kit. And I think you guys still continue to do some stuff with that down in the Panhandle area as well in Florida. All right, that's basically that part. Any questions on the data modes? We've kind of run through this quickly, but want to give you a flavor for it. Any questions? One more section. Where are we on time? We're not too far off. Want to do one more thing to give you a little bit of a treat. What's a Raspberry Pi? Does it taste very good? It will leave a good taste with you, though. All right. When I normally use a DVAP, this is the configuration I would take with me. This is my netbook, my little Acer netbook. It's connected to my Verizon MiFi card to give me an internet connection. And then I plugged in my DVAP to it. Bring it up here, Chris. Chris has built up one of these too. But let's bring in the Raspberry Pi. What is that? It is see, here's one here back in the back too. The Raspberry Pi is a credit card sized Linux computer. Now it's got some great little add-on slots to it. You've got a slot for an SD card to plug in. There's 2 USB ports, an Ethernet port, and an HDMI port for a monitor. And it's powered through just a little 5-volt micro USB adapter, and that can be off your cigarette lighter plug with a USB power port or whatever. All right, so if I put these together, I've eliminated that laptop or netbook as my computer, and I've got an easy configuration. Here is my Raspberry Pi and my DVAP. Show me the one in the back there. He's got them rubber banded together. All right. Chris, hold up yours again back there. Pull, or bring it up here. Pull the board up. He's got that little board. It's mounted on a board. The whole backpack is not needed, but he's got it mounted on a board. He's got a battery. He's got these basic ports, the DVAP, and a Raspberry Pi, and the battery, and his internet card. So You can configure this any way, package this any way you want. Another gentleman last night at the D-Star Pizza Dinner had his in a little Pelican 1050 case, which is pretty small. It's this size here. On our way up to Dayton, we just had this sitting in the back seat, plugged in. I had my Verizon card up in the dash. And as we traveled from Atlanta up here, we had D-Star coverage. Talked to a lot of folks all day long on the trip up. Worked great. Well, how do you put one of these together? First, you need, the simplest way is you can configure all this stuff up on the SD card because your operating system and any software is running on this SD card. Doesn't have a hard drive. Doesn't have any internal memory. So you can configure that up, load the what's called Raspbian Wheezy or any version of Linux that you would want for this on there. Or you can pull down one of these ready-made images. And there's a couple of different ways to put this together with a DVAP. There's two different software packages that will run a DVAP. One is DVAP Tool, and that's the one that's made by the developer of the DVAP, Robin Cutshaw. And he's come out with a special compiled version for the ARM processor. Some people have put all that together, and that makes the simplest configuration. So you can download this image at this site. Then all you have to do is put your call sign in the DVAP software, and then it will run headless, just like this, with a power source. I plug it in. It has internet access because I've got a little micro Wi-Fi USB dongle right here. Kind of hard to see, but that's it. So that gives me the Wi-Fi to my internet card, or if I'm at home, gets on my home Wi-Fi network. That's it right there, that little piece sticking out in one of the two USB ports. Now the other version is DVAP Node and IRC-DDB. It takes two modules to configure that together, but that's all available in this image. That what you do, you use some software called Win32 Disk Imager if you're running on a Windows computer. And that burns that image. It's like burning a CD, except it installs the whole OS and everything on your SD card. And then you can just plug this in and be ready to run. So there's two sources, and you can Google these out there, or you can go to the DVAP dongle group and find out more information about this. But you know, this makes a great, simple little configuration to take on the road if you're in an area that doesn't have a D-Star repeater, or you just want to operate with your handheld around. I'm 2 miles from a D-Star repeater. However, I can run in 100 milliwatt mode by running into my DVAP, and my battery lasts a lot longer on my radio. So that gets you to the point of just when you power up, it boots up, and in about 1 minute, it's ready to go. Yes, sir.
You left out the most important thing about it. It's a very expensive computer.
Oh, yeah, it's a real expensive computer, $35. Now, you'll spend a few dollars more. You can spend $8 more, $9 on that case. You'll spend another $8 or $10, whatever, for the SD card. The Wi-Fi dongle, I bought at Radio Shack for $20. I've seen them at some places for as little as $10. So for $50 to $75, soup to nuts, you can be going with it. Now you'll have to buy your DVAP with it.
Beginning, Ray asked a question, how many people have don't have D-Star coverage? I think I remember somebody raising their hand. Who raised their hand?
But do you have a DVAP or a dongle?
Not yet, that's maybe why.
I like the term yet, not yet. There's people that can fix that here in Dayton.
In fact, I am the only person in Erie County, Pennsylvania that has a D-Star radio.
Well, good. You know what? On my DV dongle that I have a little label. It's got some X's on it. Those X's are people that I've loaned my dongle to. they got hooked on D-Star, and they bought their own radio. So I'm up to about 7 X's on there right now. So that's a great way with a dongle to get started, or a DVAP, and then, you know, it's like everything else. It kind of grows. Cool. All right, that's about all. I want to leave just a few minutes for any remaining questions, and let's see where we go from there. Wayne?
Okay, this goes back to registration. Not my particular problem, but if you ever get registered and upgrade or change your call and get a personalized call, and you're already registered as InfoRND, but you change it to M1RND, then what do you do?
You will need to re-register under the new call. You don't have to, but it would be a good idea to ask the system administrator to kill that call, to delete it. You don't have to, but you can. Yes, sir.
Okay, I could not read where it says, do we have tools, that URL?
We're going to post these as quick as we can on the dstarinfo.com. I've got all of your email addresses from your registration. We'll send you out the links to those, and we hope that the videos are going to be available sometime in the near future. Not going to pin Adrian down on when, as long as it's end of the week. No, I'm kidding. We'll have that very soon. Again, I'll refer you to the videos from last year, which is posted on YouTube, the W5KUB, and we'll have new videos from this year's class, and all of the PowerPoints will be posted on there. Okay, good question. There are repeaters that are, if you go, there's another site, dstarusers.org. This is the original DStar site. And it's done by, I think, members of the Trust Server team. There is a repeater list on there. Just to be absolutely honest, that repeater list has not been maintained very well. And so you'll see things that are on there that shouldn't be on there. You'll see a lot of things that never made it on there. Even though they encourage you when you register to do that, it doesn't always happen when you register a repeater. So while it's a good site, and one of the best things it's useful for is the last heard list. Now remember, the last heard list, well, you probably don't know this, a few years ago, it would show the last 24 hours. And it wouldn't be that long of a list. I think it's the last 5 minutes, 2 minutes, something now, and it's a long list. If you key up on any repeater, gateway-equipped repeater anywhere in the world, you're going to show up on that last heard list, and it will say where you are.
Yeah, the Texas team said they play games with themselves now. They can chunk the radio and refresh your screen and see how far down the list they are.
Sometimes I get in, sometimes I can't, but I never hear it back. What I've done is, just to find out though, their actual website, you know, has their own herd in the last.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to see if everybody's on a repeater, you can actually program that.
Remember that dashboard? The callsign.dstargateway.org? That will say whether you hit that repeater or not. Oh, we got a radio to give away, don't we? No one was leaving the room for some reason. All right, is there anyone who did not get a ticket? Put your hand down, Chris. You don't count. Don't raise your hand, Adrian. All right, we're going to give away an ID 31A. If you don't win this today, you've got a chance. You can buy one. Icom would appreciate that, and the dealers would all appreciate that. But tonight, we'll be giving away a 51A as well. This is the winning ticket that I have in my hand. I'm going to give the last 4 digits. 3 digits. 0.
Oh, we got it. That was it.
0 is the first digit. 7 is the second digit. Who's still in? 6 You got it? I love it. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the wrong ticket. No, it's right.
Why, thank you.
Congratulations. Watch your foot. All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Come back this evening, this room. We'll have a lot more people in here tonight. We'll have some good speakers. You'll learn even more. Go buy a radio.
Great, I think that worked out. Good. Unfortunately, didn't get the presenter, but the alternative was fair. I'm not sure.
We're on the same network.
Yeah, I mean, everything was great.
Network, they don't.